We are live, sir. You can start.
Good morning, everyone. A very warm greeting to all of you on behalf of the All India Plastics Manufacturers Association. I welcome you all and thank you all for joining us today for this session. As you know, the All India Plastics Manufacturers Association has always recognized its responsibility towards the industry and is always committed to work for its growth and betterment. During Plastic World 2020, we have also taken one such step for the best interest of the industry. And I'm sure that not only the exhibitors, but visitors, buyer, etc., are also going to benefit from it big time. Since the beginning of the pandemic, understanding the challenges and difficulties the business were set to witness, we try to offer the best of the solutions. And I'm happy to say that we are our knowledge partners, SSA Business Solutions. We have been working together since I believe April or May last year. And we have brought one of the best programs for the industry. And the series of programs which APMA has brought in has immensely benefited, and we have had very good feedback from the industry. These series were designed with an aim to cover the potential opportunity what is opening up after the pandemic, and how basically we can guide the business leaders to develop their vision strategy for the profitability improvement and growth. So having said that, I again welcome all of you to this program. And let me start by introducing our panelists today. We have Mr. N.C. Narayan, one of the renowned gurus of management in the country, and not only in the country, internationally. He is the founder chairman of SSA Group of Companies. After 3 decades of corporate leadership career in automobile and auto ancillary industries, NC founded SSA in 1999 with a missionary zeal to transform Indian industries to become globally competitive by transforming the way in which they think and act. In the last 2 decades, NC's passion for excellence spread across many global companies with the same intensity as in India. NC has in fact authored many books on organizational transformation. Some of his popular books are Enigma of Lean Six Sigma in Nutshell, and Statistical Guide for Six Sigma. These books have been also translated in various regional languages. He has been conferred with several awards in recognition of his contribution to the field of quality and business excellence. He is one of the revered speakers and regularly chairs international conferences on various topics, example Six Sigma, operational excellence, and all. He's also a gold medalist in mechanical engineering from Anna University. We have this NC is known to be perhaps the best in the field of providing the management insight, a practical management insight to the industry. We also have Mr. Ganesh Iyer in panel today. He is the vice chairman of SSA Business Solutions. Ganesh is a graduate in chemical engineering from Mumbai University with leadership management program for INSEAD France. He has 20 years of industrial experience spanning across diverse sectors. And last 10 years, he has spent in business process consulting for strategy, operation, design, and development. He is also a certified project management professional involved in a wide variety of technical and business engagement in the fields of manufacturing and services, business application systems. He has led number of change management engagements using the Lean Six Sigma methodology. Ganesh has trained more than 1,000 green belts around the world and has coached as many breakthroughs improvement projects. So we are delighted to have Ganesh in the panel. We also have Mr. Hiren Chandrana. He is our industry stalwart and alumni of RMIT Melbourne, completed BTech from Bracknell College, UK in 1992. Then went on to pursue graduate diploma in tool and die making from NTT of Bengaluru before studying plastic engineering from RMIT Melbourne. Mr. Hiren Chandrana is an entrepreneur by nature, joined the family business of injection molding and mold making in 1996-97. And currently he is the promoter and managing director of Intech, Kunststoff Solution Private Limited, engaged in the manufacturing of injection molds and molding for precision industrial parts for various segments such as automobile, industrial electronics, electricals and switchgear industries, FMCG, as well as medical devices and equipment industry. So we are delighted to have you in the panel today. And I would now request NC to take this program forward with his insight on paradigm shift for profit leadership, identifying profit leakages and area of improvements, followed by Ganesh. And finally, we will have the industry perspective by Mr. Hiren Chandra. So over to you, NC. It's all yours.
Thank you very much, Deepak, for a wonderful introduction. And it's my great privilege and pleasure of attending this conference with such an august audience today. So before I step into the subject proper, I would request Ganesh to give you a heads up on today's program, and then I will step in subsequently. Ganesh?
Sure. Thank you, NC, very much. So what I will be doing is I'm going to be sharing my screen right here and then introduce the topic. Just let me know if the screen is visible, NC.
Yeah, Ganesh. Yeah, it's visible. Yeah.
All right, fine, perfect. So yeah, great. So the profit leadership, before we get into the subject, I'll be introducing about the company SSA, and the topic itself is going to be broken up into 3 different sections where NC will set the context. I will talk about the Indian industry context in specifics, and Naveen would also give in certain insights into how to get and start managing the profit leadership and what are the various elements which we can focus on. So without much delay, I will start with covering a brief profile about SSA. So SSA has been founded by NC in 1999. So we are over 21 years in existence, having a global footprint today across the African region, the Middle East region, South Asia region, covering different countries in these areas. We are headquartered in Mumbai. NC, of course, comes with, he is a spiritual guru to many. He is a CEO coach. He has authored, his latest book is Pragmatic Leadership, which is published by McGraw-Hill. And this has become a sort of a course in itself for industry, wherein how do you develop leaders within industry is something which is highly sought of. His other 2 publications earlier were Lean Six Sigma in a nutshell and Enigma of Lean, which are available online on Amazon. He also shares and writes a lot on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Blogspot and LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out to him on these resources where he shares knowledge on variety of topics besides the technical topics. He also writes on how to get into meditation, how to do spirituality, what is it, and demystifies a lot of things. So in the context of SSA in specific, as you can see, we have serviced over 24 countries, over 1,000 plus business models. We are agnostic to the business model in which it is, but our focus is to drive profit leadership in the organizations we partner with. That is the primary focus. So the focus area for profitability when we get into organizations, we focus on conversion cost, which is your RM to FG conversion cost. So we get into the design areas where you have a proprietary design. Then how do we look at design optimization, which contributes directly to the direct material cost, which is consumed in the product. The cost of inventory, be it your raw material, work in process, or your finished good. How do you manage your on-time in full deliveries while keeping your cost of inventory minimum? That becomes a focus area. Indirect labor cost, which is your support function cost, your supply chain, planning, procurement, finance, all these other functions. How are they aligned to grow as we continuously improvise the shop floor areas? The cost of poor quality is something which very, very core to the DNA of any improvement, wherein we look at defects, rejects, reworks, and bring in a paradigm change or a continuous improvement culture building. How do you engage that with the strategy of an organization? This is something which we do. Last but not the least, distribution and logistics costs. So how are you set up to ensure that you don't have lost business opportunities due to non-availability of material? And how do you optimize your logistics costs? These are the areas we focus on. As you can see here from the select global clientele, it is wide across all regions. And it is sector agnostic in terms of our approach and delivery. Typical work packages which we have formulated to support industry. First is the vendor integration program, where your product quality is largely dependent on your incoming raw material quality. So how do you build your robust supply chains becomes part of this offering. Design optimization, where we talk about right first time design, that becomes the focus area in this design optimization program. Working capital optimization, where we focus on inventory management as a primary area and also look at driving throughput along with the lean manufacturing program, which we do. Distribution network planning, which I mentioned. And last but not the least, all these change management programs are probably, cannot be done in isolation without implementing the IT and HRM optimization. So how are these support functions going to embrace and introduce the change management becomes part of it. SSA is partnered with Demand Driven Institute. We're affiliate of Demand Driven Institute based in the US. And we also implement a solution called B2Wise, which is in terms of the implementing the demand driven MRP programs. So these are the technology solutions which SSA offers. ERP, evaluation, selection, production planning, scheduling. How do you do that, manage that? Scorecard automation, inventory optimization, Industry 4.0 assessment guidance, IT gap assessment. These are the areas where SSA focuses on. So we have a stall in Hall 5, H5, along with IPMA, Center for Industrial Management Programs. So please do visit it for gathering more information about what we do and how we help the industry. Over to you, NC, now to take it ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Ganesh. I'll just share my screen. Can you see my screen, Ganesh?
Not yet.
The screen not visible. Is it clear now?
Yes.
Ganesh? Yeah.
Yes, it's come.
Go on to the slideshow. Thank you very much once again. It's my pleasure to share some of my thoughts with you. This concept of profit leadership that we are going to discuss today is not something totally new for the business leaders. So primarily everyone is in the business is primarily focusing on the profitability. Just to give some background about the reason for this topic of profit leadership is being taken up for discussion. I know that this pre-COVID scenario, there were many business challenges, but the COVID-19 has really virtually brought in a challenge for almost every little aspect of human life. So one of the most important aspects, it has laid its hands in all aspects of the economy. But looking back into the 2021, there is a huge amount of positive sentiments emerging across the various parts of the world with the emerging leadership. And quite interestingly, this part of the Asia Pacific region is showing up a significant kind of opportunity for coming up with a better future. So looking into this aspect, of course, focusing on particularly India's vision of bringing the Atmanirbhar, becoming self-reliant and becoming global, at the same time remaining one of the best in the local business as well. So the situations for the business leaders are looking very bright. It all depends on how the leadership is going to take advantage of these emerging scenarios. So out of the almost 5 decades of my corporate life and then consulting, one of the major area of concern for industries is the focus on the leadership, how they are trying to drive the organization. So there are two terms in this which we are discussing, profit and leadership. As we go along, the concept will become much more clearer. Essentially, the economic reform that is happening almost in every part of the world is challenging many things like the technology part, and the whole globalization is also becoming a different kind of a concept. And then the MSMEs are becoming the most important vital part of any business economics in any country. So everyone is focusing on the wealth creation now, and then the taking stock of the situation of the business value streams in the last 8 months and the upbringing of the new technologies. Every business model has got an opportunity to completely revisit and reconstruct their own business value streams. So there are a bit of a sentiment issues connected to, few months back. People have virtually given up because large number of unemployment as well as enormous amount of financial strains across the industries. So looking back into the history where Japan was razed to grounds in the 1940s, and then subsequently they emerged into one of the largest successful economy in the world. So what is the most important aspect today we want to cover is how the leadership paradigm shifts are required, and then how we can focus on utilizing this crisis as an opportunity rather than trying to get depressed about it. So having said that, this whole program today, there are 3 sessions that we have designed, primarily focusing on the leadership for the startup today in the forenoon session, and then we would like to take up inventory optimization as the next topic in the afternoon. And then the third major area where the quality becomes a most important aspect for the utilizing the future. So this whole program today we are going to cover, as the famous saying is, we cannot change the wind direction, but nevertheless we can adjust our sail. So that is the essential part of today's program that we are going to discuss. So in the various approaches that we have taken, the transformation approach, which is essentially, I'm not using the term change here because change is always incremental and the transformation is always a breakthrough. So far the incremental improvements have given a marginal advantage, but looking at the new normal that is emerging in every aspect of the business scenarios, I think we need to take a major transformation approach. And since we have been brought back to the ground zero because of the last 8 months lockdowns, etc., we need to have a year of recovery, which we have brought about certain very important strategies to how do we recover and survive and keep our heads above the water. And then we also look at the year of consolidation. Essentially, there are huge opportunities which we will discuss today, where there are certain long-term thought process has to be initiated, which can bring in the year of excellence. So that means we need to plan our leadership initiatives by bringing in these 3 stages of transformation. So having said that, if you look at the global scenario, I thought that I will share some of the analysis I've done recently. Few years back, from 1990 onwards, at least in the Asia Pacific region, the globalization became one of the buzzword, where the whole economy was opened up for the global players to come in. And recent share prices which are booming shows the sentiment that it can no longer be a protected local economy. As I was just seeing that the 2 countries where we are predominantly present, Oman and India, you will see that the number of, the position as well as the easiness to do business has been significantly improving from 100 to 77 in India, and Oman it is closer to 78. So that means there are countries which are trying to provide the ambience and environment so that the global economy can grow. So in other words, the Pangea is believed to have been the mass of land that was there in this planet Earth, and they believe another 200 million years later is going to become one more mass of single land. So the whole trend of the whole sentiments across the world is the coexistence rather than we are divided. So another interesting observation during my study has revealed that this particular slide shows that there are 7.8 billion people are there in this planet, out of which 2/3 of the population, which is living in the developed and underdeveloped countries, they are contributing to the 1/3 of the global GDP. But whereas the 33%, approximately 1/3 of the population living in the so-called developed countries, are contributing to the 2/3 of the world GDP. So what does it indicate here is the whole outlook and the way in which the leadership is looking at any scenarios and how they are making progress is very critical rather than what we are going to do in the coming years. So that means there is a huge opportunity for the developing countries to focus on the efficiency of their own business models. So having said that, in terms of the superpowers, the so-called the world's leading economies, although USA have gone through a turbulent time, virtually almost all developed economies have gone through a turbulent time. But what is happening, this shakeout is happening such that countries like India, etc., were not there in the race at all. They are coming closer to the third largest economies in the world. So going forward, it all depends on how the leadership is looking at these kind of, opening up of opportunities, rather than not to stay with the status quo and remain in the comfort zone. Rocking the boat is what is going to be the order of the day in the coming years. So having said that, being an octogenarian almost during the course of my career, during the protected economy time, whatever the cost the companies would incur additionally, that can be simply passed on to the customer. That's the way the automobile industry in which I was working, they were not very much worried about the increasing cost. But the post-globalization scenario, we can no longer pass on the cost to the consumer. So that means the organizational internal efficiencies and effectiveness are becoming a very predominant part of the leadership agenda. So having said that, now this whole program of profit leadership that we are going to discuss, I thought at the 50,000 feet perspective, I just wanted to share with you. The new emerging concept is every company is delivering a value to the customer in terms of maybe in this case, I've just shown an example of a burger, which means that every organization delivers value. That's the reason it exists. But on the left-hand side, when you see there is a business value stream which has been created over a period of time, organically or inorganically, which has got its own cost of manufacture or providing the services to the customer. So what is happening is the perceived value of the customer is expected to increase and the cost has to become lesser and lesser. So going forward, the main game that leadership has to play in terms of profit leadership is essentially how can we enhance the value to the consumer. At the same time, how can we bring in more effective and efficient value streams? So the kind of opportunities emerge. For example, we are holding a global conference of this kind with so many people participating from various parts of the globe at a different time zone. These kind of technology breakthroughs have really brought a huge amount of opportunity for us to move forward. So having said that, looking into the GCC and the Asia Pacific countries, we have many macroeconomic issues which are one by one are being tackled. And then we have the microeconomics issues within the organization, low efficiency, depleting margins, and rising cost and things like that. I just want to draw the attention of the business leaders to keep this in mind. That means we will be working on a much more tougher environment in the coming years as compared to a fair amount of settled zone in which our grandparents have worked. So essentially, in summary, the kind of opportunities that are opening are immense. And there are reactive leadership companies which are essentially waiting for the problem to hit them. So they will all get closed down over a period of time, as I've shown Thomas Cook or many organizations which were once upon a time very well known have all disappeared in no time. So the proactive leadership companies can survive for a pretty long time and also take full advantage of this transformation that is happening. So having said that, so business leaders' agenda are very simple. We want to improve our profit and we want to grow, and we want to have the perpetuity of the organization to live long. And then the image of the company should continue to be more and more well known. But whenever I meet the business leaders, they have immense amount of problems. I cannot get a better illustration than this. Delivery not met, inventory is piling up, or accountability of the people is a problem, or increasing debtors because we keep on borrowing money beyond the ability of the organization to service those funds, customer returns, firefighting. The problem can be endless. So the leaders are put under much bigger problems or firefighting. And with the result, they are not able to focus on the kind of a breakthrough improvements in the organization. Now, typically, if you take any benchmark of international best-in-class company and compare with any of the industries in Asia, you will find there is a huge gap in the performance of these industries, be it the turnover per employee, or be it the stock to turnover ratio of their inventory, or their delivery performance, or reach, or whatever may be the benchmark parameters you may consider. I think there is a huge gap. And in the last 20 years, I noticed that a lot of small improvements are undertaken, which is shown in the dotted line here. But there is no breakthrough improvements that are being contemplated. Now, having come to a stage that our coronavirus has really brought a different kind of outlook, so we need to probably look into the opportunities much better. So having said that, my mentor during my upbringing stages I said that if you want to transform an organization, there are three factors you need to look into it. Many a time we say that cultural change is important, but cultural change doesn't happen unless the organizational business value stream structure is changed and the system is changed. So in the recent past, there are huge amount of concepts and thought leaderships have come into existence for leaders to make use of. Some of them we will discuss today. So what is important is to consider the transformation approach by which we can improve our competitive advantage, quality, cost, delivery, safety, service, and relationship. So once upon a time it was QCDS, but it is now stretching beyond how do you build relationship with our customers as well. So that is where I think I thought I will hand over to Ganesh, and if we have any questions, we will definitely take it up during our panel discussion. Over to you, Ganesh.
Yeah. Once you stop sharing, I will just start it and see.
Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. Yes, Ganesh.
Okay. Thank you. So is the screen visible, full screen? Nancy?
The slideshow, is it in slideshow, Ganesh?
Let me. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so the context which I am going to set is what is the current scenario in the Indian plastic industry. And in the last 1.5 to 2 years and in the past also, we have been very closely working with the plastic industry and seeing how the growth of generations have happened and what is this industry. So we'll just deep dive. I'm going to deep dive into some of the challenges which are being faced. And then Naveen, our managing director from the Middle East, is going to talk about what interventions we can take to combat that. So if you start with just taking context of the where we are, and in the context of the plastic industry, of course, one of the biggest competition comes to India is from China. Now, if you really see, a lot of things have been said in terms of how much growth has happened in both these countries. But if you really look at the contribution which is coming and where this growth is coming from, there is certain stark differences which have to be seen and looked at. One, in the Chinese industries, when we look at it, while the first point which is there, which I am sharing, is regarding the number of MSME organizations which are there, which are almost same, 99% and 98% over here. However, the GDP contribution from this industry segment is where there is the first difference, where here it is about 50 to 60% GDP contribution comes from this industry sector, whereas in India it's only 15%. And then the employment provided here, it is 82% versus 40%. So what this kind of translates to is the growth potential which is there with MSMEs are not seemingly being taken up by the Indian industries, by the Indian entrepreneurs for whatever reason, and they trend to remain smaller in size and operations, versus China has got a larger impetus to grow. So this is one thing which we thought is a good starting point for us. Now, of course, from our industry segmentation, this is a very wide industry across engineering plastics, consumer plastics, rigid packaging, flexible packaging, and the list goes on endlessly to, like now they are talking about implants and other things, human, you just name it and there is plastic which is there. So it is there to stay, it is there to continue as an industry and only to grow. If you look at the consumption pattern by application in India, two major areas which contribute 50%. One is agricultural and second is packaging. Now these two industries together contribute to about 50% almost of all the plastics which are being consumed. And then there are other segments which are growing up, which is like the electronic and houseware, and even engineering plastics is now seeing a steady trend of growth. But these are all the segments where the consumption really happens, which means that if you really look at it, it is more at a consumer level rather than when we look at it agricultural and packaging. Packaging is also being consumed for largely in the FMCG sector and other areas where you need these kind of packaging solutions. Getting to the profit leakages which are happening in these industries. Now, when we look at when the term profit leakage, what really are we focused on? Here, what we are saying is every industry, when we look at the profit and loss statement, there is a top line and there is a bottom line. So when we look at it, we find that at any given top line, there is an opportunity to increase the bottom line or reduce the bottom line by 20 to 30%, which happens in the terms of profit leakage in our view. Now, this profit leakage is primarily where the organization is spending money but not earning for those spent. Now, a typical example of that would be like, like where you are changing the dies on your machines whenever the product changes, right? But the time it takes to change these dies and the method which we use can be such that, some industries, if you look at it in China, they do it within a very short period of time. but for a similar industry in India, it takes at least twice or thrice the amount of time. So there are significant differences in the method we operate, leading to the efficiency being very slow. Then that's where the throughput gets diminished in terms of how much output you can generate. Second is the defects contribution. And what we have found, in seeing the industry, more than 50% contribution of all defects comes from the machine contribution. So if I look the fishbone diagram and look at the major causes of the defects, machine contribution is highest, mold contribution is next, and last is the material and people contribution. And if you really look at the type of defects which happen in injection molding, then you have a variety of these defects which are coming, which impact. Now this, in the film industry, when we see the film industry, they have different reasons of defects in terms of blows and spots and other things. So every industry is facing with defects as a big area of concern for them. Every industry is facing with the inappropriate machine as a problem, inappropriate molds as a problem for them. All of this leads to the productivity taking a hit. We did a project in a packaging industry, and here what you can see is the typical major processes which are there: gluing, printing, packing, packing slitting, and then packing roll. These are the major activities which happen in a packaging industry. And then we were analyzing how much of the activity, how many activities which are being performed by the people on the shop floor, are they value adding? VA represents value adding, and non-value adding are the ones which contribute to the profit leakage. So NVA, as is shown here, which is shown in the orange, is the non-value added activities on the shop floor. On an average, you can see 25% of the activities which are being performed are non-value adding, which could be like simply like person is searching for something, doesn't have the right tools, is waiting for some approvals to happen, is waiting for the raw materials to arrive so that he can start the operations. All of these are situations of activities which contribute to non-value adding activities, where time is being spent, effort is being spent, but there is no output. So moving ahead, you can see, so we did a overall SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunity, threat analysis. And here we are looking more in the inside part of it, which is the strength and weakness, which is internal to an organization. Now, when we look at typical Indian industries, we find the strengths are the technical competencies, the experience in manufacturing, good track record, labor quality and quantities, availability, it is cheap, and associations help to entrepreneurs is also forthcoming. However, in terms of weaknesses, there are a lot of areas which need improvement. There is a tendency to not focus on quality as an deliverable. Lack of cost control, no latest technology, automation. The kind of machines which are being used are not in line with the current technologies. Labor management is poor, integrity levels are poor. While supplies, we take up large orders, but the reliability of meeting on time in full is poor. Best practices are there for namesake being displayed, but it is not there as a culture. Accountability is poor, management practices are lacking, and the mentality is more of trying to save rather than invest and grow. So these are the, if I look at all the areas where we can really start focusing on, and when we take up the engagement on profit leadership part, we try to address both these. How do you make use of these strengths which is there, convert it into opportunities, and how do you work on your weakness to continuously improve and take it ahead? So what are those opportunities which are there? And with the COVID coming in and all the other changes which have happened in the last 9 months in this year, there are a lot of new opportunities which are coming up as well. So one, there is a strong thrust to accelerate Make in India. So the FI investments which is coming into the Indian industry, as seen by the stock market also, you can see that there is a huge impetus on that. Second, the focus is not for component manufacturing or just assembly of components, other things. The focus now is going towards complete manufacturing. So where they want a whole product to be manufactured rather than a component to be manufactured. So we are seeing a change in demand patterns which are there from our customers, asking the manufacturers that can you value add into your process and help to create the whole end product rather than one component. So are we ready to invest into those other areas to source those other components, do the whole assembly, and create a complete assembly line? These are things which are opportunities. Manufacture for global markets. A lot of players have been catering to the local markets, but now because of the demand and because of the backlash in China and other regions which are there, there is a demand for global market manufacturing. Advantages which are there, we talked about it: low labor cost, more export opportunities, and last but not the least is developing the competencies. In this area, I would like to say that this is one area where probably the Indian industry is lacking a lot in developing the competencies. There is methodology, there is technology, and Naveen is going to speak a little more on this. Our focus is on only using operators to get the job done, what is to be done. But the competency of why it is to be done in a particular way or how it is to be done better, how do you develop these competencies of continuous improvement? These are fairly lacking in large portion of the industry. So I will now go from the technical part into the software aspect, wherein we look at how the management practices are. And when I see the industry at large, these are largely family-owned businesses. And with family-owned businesses, one of the challenges which comes is you have a founder who is there at the helm of affairs, probably wanting started or in the process of the succession planning at this point of time. The second gen has taken over, taken the organization to next level in terms of doing good things in the organization. And now, the third generation is also coming into play in terms of the growth, taking over and diversifying into different newer areas. So we can see that the ambition levels, the differences which are there, who is going to pick up and then look at it in terms of how we are going to manage it, right? So traditional family businesses are run with the promoters as the driver seats, versus going into a professionally managed organization wherein third-party person is made responsible for the decision making and driving the organization. So we have seen that affluence, richness has grown through these entrepreneurial generations. Along with that, also what NC says, there is an ambition and aggressiveness of the organization. So the founder, because he has taken the risk to diversify and take up, his appetite for ambition and aggressiveness is very high. So the founder puts in his life to developing the industry and growing it through his years. The second gen also sees that passion, anger, takes it the aggressiveness, brings in a further impetus to the business, takes it. However, post that, we see a decline phase which starts happening in the third and fourth. If you see the market research, it says that less than 5% of family-run organizations can sustain over 4 generations, less than 5%, which means that 95% of family-run businesses either perish during the third or fourth generations. And this is an area which becomes an opportune area for us to start looking at it is how do we start thinking of different management practices which we can bring in during this growth phase itself, so that we can at least get into a steady or a continuous growth phase. The challenges which are being faced, of course, is the role clarity of the owners, power sharing which happens between the different directors of the organization, which could be family members. Along with the power sharing, the wealth sharing, who is actively contributing, who is passively contributing, and how the distribution should happen. The clarity in terms of the vision of the future, in terms of directing it to a single goal, or each director trying to drive different areas of diversification. So the vision and purpose of the enterprise go hand in hand in terms of saying that why do we exist, and how do we bring coherence in terms of what we are doing. The competency gaps I talked about across all levels is a challenge. The governance practices, how do we bring in best practices so that decision making can be governed properly and taken into action. And lastly, how do we drive succession planning in the organization, and who is the right person to take over different roles. So these are different challenges which are being faced by family-run organizations. SSA helps, we have a separate HR focus vertical, which tries to address these concerns and tries to bring in certain solutions which can help bring down some of these challenges. So one of the starting points is developing the skill and mindset required to break these challenges. So we look at across all levels. It could be bottom up or it could be top down. We feel that both these need to be driven right from the topmost level. The change in mindset is required and the change in methodology is required at the bottom line. So unless these two align together, we'll always have difficulties. The tendency in industry is always to blame the external, meaning that blaming the government policies, anti-dumping, trade protection, or a union problem. So the tendency is always to hide behind certain external things which are outside our control, and then say that nothing can be done in this industry. And this is what we have seen as one of the mindsets which prevent us from growing. Second, we don't want to bring in a third party because we fear losing control. So we want to have a high people dependency. We don't want to go over, keep third party people, and then ability to deal with that, engage with them in a meaningful professional manner. These are areas which is again a mindset change which is required. I already talked about this. How do you keep the generations interest alive in the business and what way they can contribute meaningfully is also something which is very important. Most important one, which I see, which is going to drive the growth of the industry, is the lack of customer focus and quality focus. So we always have the tendency of keeping profit before customer. So how do we balance this, and how methodologies help to drive profitability along with keeping the highest quality and the customer focus in mind? There are a lot of ways by which we could try and change the way we manage. I see a lot of the bad management practices, bad designs, broken promises, which basically hinder this growth of the size of the customer or even the growth within a customer segment. So quality goes hand in hand with customer focus. So how do you develop quality consciousness? How do you measure it? How do you do it? A lot of companies we see that while they are very good at ensuring that bad quality does not go to the customers. So when we say that bad quality, and when I talked about here in terms of the customer, it is not that the quality is being delivered bad to the customer. No way. The Indian companies are very, very focused in terms of ensuring that the right quality reaches the customer. But the problem is this is being done through a higher focus on quality control, which means that end of line quality is being rigorously checked to ensure that no bad quality goes to our customers. But the lot of rework and rejection. So the whole thought process is that nothing is wasted in plastic industry. Why? Because anything which gets rejected at the QC will also get reground, will also go back into our input. So the mindset is that, as long as we focus on quality control, at the end of the line, we are taken care of. So this mindset has to change. There is a lot of hidden capacity which gets caught up in trying to do these reworks, which has to change. lack of robustness in systems and processes. So we look at everything across these areas. High dependencies on particular areas, more specifically in terms of the mold making and ability to receive the molds on time. This is something where there's a large dependency on China for the molds. And this is one area where in the last 1 year, I would say that a lot of demand has come where companies have started to set up and focus more on setting up in-house tool rooms, in-house capabilities to develop this because of the challenges we are facing now. Housekeeping and layout. This is another area where significant improvement has happened in this area, but still a lot more is there in terms of where we can go in terms of the technology which is being used, warehouse management systems, the kind of automation which can be possibility, and bringing in single touch equipments, robotics. There is because of the owner's mentality and also the perpetuity of the organization in question, the ability to invest into these newer technologies and do this becomes lesser and lesser. Unless that mindset changes, we will not see a big growth in this particular area. Last but not the least, I think industry best practices. This is one area where I think IPMA is doing a great job in terms of bringing in a lot of these compliances, bringing in best practices to the various entrepreneurs. And I think this is going to help a lot in terms of ensuring the ability of organizations to meet the mandatory regulatory requirements. In short, the time now is right for change. Time is always right for change. It's never late to change. So as Helen Keller has said, the only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision, right? So I think with this quote, I would like to call upon Naveen to say that what can we do to handle these challenges? What are the best practices which leading organizations, successful organizations have implemented and gained? And Naveen is going to talk to you about how these challenges can be handled. Naveen, over to you.
Can I have the control, please? So moving on, in the subject of profit leadership, I think Ganesh and NC set the stage for the context for looking at our organizations differently. And profit leadership is a framework SSA developed some time ago, bringing together various principles of organizational excellence and weaving it into an execution model for profit leadership. So what really is profit leadership? Any entrepreneur who invests money in a business expects to make return on that investment. So needless to say, the ability of the business to generate profitable returns is going to be fundamental to that vision. But how many enterprises do deliver that vision is the question we are asking. And there are multiple reasons why the profit leadership is not realized, right? So we can all agree that the single point agenda for any entrepreneur or any shareholder of any business is to create more profits, and that can be measured in accounting terms as return on capital employed or return on equity and return on shareholders' equity and so on. So, but what comes in the way for achieving higher profits? So if you take any industry, one is, we aspire to achieve higher profits, right? We want to be the lowest cost producer, because today the competition is not only within one geography, but we are competing with global supply chains. And we have seen what happened during COVID also, when there was a lot of anticipation for a lot of manufacturing, a lot of sourcing opportunities flowing into India. But sadly, not everything came to India. A lot of opportunities went to Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, Thailand, and so on. So this is opportunity for us to reflect, because the capital always follows in a free market. It follows the lowest cost opportunity. And if we are not able to gear ourselves up to becoming the most attractive destination, aside from the regulatory challenges, which could be one factor, how attractive we are to be able to become a sourcing destination, right? So these parameters become very crucial. And of course, perpetuity and image are other factors which any entrepreneur aspires for. We want to be seen as, highly attractive and highly respected in the industry. Now, this was a survey done by Deloitte University Press a few years ago, featured in this book called Demand Driven MRP. Now, this was an interesting survey. They were looking at the American enterprises, and they were looking at the return on investment on businesses ranging from the 1970s, late 1960s, till recent years. And what they found is, on a consolidated basis, the return on investment has been depleting. So this is an interesting question to ask. This is the same period where the global GDP grew around eightfold. So that means in general, businesses were prospering. This was also the time when globalization was opening up, where industries were moving away from local sourcing, local supply chains to global sourcing and global supply chains. So on one hand, economies have grown in this time frame, but the return on investment from a pure shareholder's perspective, the return on investment in businesses on a consolidated basis has depleted. So this is an important question to ask. Why is this dichotomy, right? On one hand, economies are growing, but we are not able to generate greater value from our enterprises. Now let's deep dive what must have contributed to that. So in any business, you will agree that the return on investment, or whichever basis you calculate the returns, it is based on how much profits the business generates, right? The profit can be estimated in terms of operating profit for simplicity. And there will always be a gap between what we deserve, what we rightfully deserve as profits, which we can call it as entitlement profit, and what is the real profit that we achieve. Now, this difference is what is the area of concern. And this could be due to various factors. Any entrepreneur, any business leader will agree that there are many profit leaks. Every year we develop a budget. We are going to grow our business by 10%. We are going to acquire so many customers. We are going to increase our volumes. And we put many ambitious things in our budget. But at the end of the year, when we reflect on our performance against the budget, oftentimes you will find there are a lot of deviations, right? These deviations could be one, because we could not achieve certain sales objectives, and many factors also pertaining to the cost of doing business, right? Our logistics cost went up because we had to do expedited shipment, or our material cost went up, or our manufacturing rejections went up, due to which our direct material cost to sale increased. So there will be many things that are unanticipated, which are what we call as profit leaks, and these are our areas of concern. And a lot of these, some of these may not be in our direct control. Like if raw material cost goes up, that will affect the whole industry. But there are many things that may be within our control, like manufacturing losses, yield improvement in manufacturing, or speed with which we can develop dies and make them ready and acquire, start processing new orders. These are a lot of factors which are well within our control, but they are also factors, if not managed well, lead to profit leaks. So therefore, for us to enhance our return on investment, we have to increase our profit. Needless to say, right? More profit the business generates, greater is the return on investment. And if we can achieve that with lesser overall capital employed in the business, that makes it even more exciting, right? Capital employed could be in the form of working capital, which is your inventories, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and so on. And capital also in terms of property, plant, and equipment. Right? For a moment, we can see that if I can minimize my capital invested in the business, and I can maximize my profitability generated from my business, my return on investment is going to go up. And this is the holy grail, really, right? Today, many businesses are coming up. They are becoming asset light, right? If you see an extreme example of Uber or Airbnb, where they don't own any of the assets. So even during the pandemic, they could pretty much come unscathed, although they had few months of losses with almost zero occupancy. and zero utilization, but still they could bounce back after the pandemic with very minimal damages on a long-term basis. So a lot of businesses are fundamentally rethinking how their business models can be organized so that by minimizing the capital employed in the business and maximizing the operational efficiency of the business, they can improve the return on investment, right? So an important question is the efficiency loss in the business and the poor effectiveness in the business are the factors that drag down our ability to achieve greater return on investment. So efficiency is more in terms of how we convert our input and output from a manufacturing sense or from order to delivery parlance. And effectiveness is how good we are in meeting customer requirements on time and full. So some of the levers that affect the efficiency and effectiveness of the firm are how quick we are to bring new products out or launch products in the market, how capable we are in managing our working capital, how good we are in flowing information and material through our organizational value streams, and how good our distribution network is. Now, organization upon organization, we witness, we've had the privilege, SSA, we have worked with 1,000+ industries over the years. And business upon business, when we start to deep dive into these parameters, we always find that there are many, many hidden gems of opportunities, right? Recently, I was in conversation with one of my good friends in the plastic industry. And in fact, I'm doing my doctoral research at the moment in lean. How can lean enable profit leadership and enable competitive advantage? And one of the areas I'm studying is how the lead time performance of a firm influences its ability to make more profits and greater returns. So one of my friends in plastic industry was commenting that in India we have one of the big challenges is that how quick we are to develop the mold from the time requirement is generated to when the mold is ready for production, right? That time becomes crucial for us to have a competitive edge. And for good or bad reason, most of our Indian friends have been depending on our Chinese counterparts to supply the molds, because apparently they are much quicker in manufacturing the molds, and they are able to produce and deliver the molds on a shorter turnaround time as compared to our ability to do it in-house in our country. Now, this caught my attention, and I requested this friend of mine that can I do a deep dive research, and I'm due to really deep dive and investigate this particular case, because I find this as a very curious case, not just affecting one industry, but this can have a big impact on the whole economy of the country. Because if our own folks with all the technology and expertise and capability in the industry have to depend on folks from another country for their core requirement, then this speaks volumes about there must be something lacking in our ability to make and produce and commercialize on a shorter time scale, right? So if this particular issue is tackled, this will mean that greater volume of business coming our way and being able to turn around that business much quicker. So this is clearly one lever. The speed of introducing new products is a very important lever that affects the competitiveness of the industry, right? We already spoke about working capital, which is another very, very key lever. And working capital management, again, is a very, most of the times we resort to firefighting, right? What are the levers for working capital management? So it is our days sales inventory, how much inventory we hold, right? It is our okay. So how much inventory we hold in terms of days of sale. And it is how much we have in terms of days sales outstanding minus our days sales payable, right? So out of these, you will find that most of the times the accounts folks will say, okay, we can improve our working capital by increasing the payment terms with our suppliers, right? Today we may have 30-day payment terms with suppliers. Let us stretch it out to 60 days, or let us stretch it out to 90 days or 180 days. Especially in COVID, we found a lot of these practices. This may give you a short-term relief. Maybe it looks good also on your balance sheet. But what happens in the long term, suppliers are going to get disenfranchised and we are going to lose more business and more competitiveness. And this is not really sustainable, right? But what are we doing about the inventory that we are piling up? What are we doing about our collection efficiency? These become important questions to answer, right? For a moment, okay, let's say collection efficiency maybe is a temporary issue. The whole industry is suffering because of the challenges. But what are we doing about inventory, right? Not much, because very little thought is given, right? Oftentimes we may either do opportunistic buying. Okay, something is available cheap. Let us book a big shipment. We will see anyway demand hai, customer mil jayega, bana denge. All of those thoughts will kind of color our judgment in terms of how much we commit in terms of capital blocked as inventory. But over time, we find that it is doing more of disservice. One is the storage cost associated with preserving that inventory, and then being in the press to utilize it or book more orders at a discount. So the efficiency with which the inventory is turned around is pathetic, right? Recently, there was a study done, multi-year study done by one of the lean gurus called Richard Schonberger. He was studying the inventory turnover performance of industries around the world. And in summary, he finds that it is pathetic. Even in the automotive industry, they started with inventory turnover 12-14%. They reached 12-14 times inventory turnover ratio. That means less than a month of inventory in the overall supply chain. And now they are reeling in the range of 5 to 6. So there is a clear problem here, right? And not much has done to address this issue. So there's lots to be done in this area. Principles like demand-driven in material requirement planning. A lot of great work is happening in this space that the industries are coming up with dramatic improvements to their inventory turnover performance. Recently, we had an experience with the automotive OEM, one of the leaders, two-wheeler manufacturers in India, where the inventory turnover increased by more than 30% from the baseline, releasing about 16-17 crores worth of capital from the system. So this is an often ignored area that has a direct impact on your return on investment. And the velocity of information and material flow, again, people find this as a, what exactly do you mean? It's very hard to fathom. But getting people together to recognize what our organization value stream is, who our customer is, how quickly we are taking the orders, processing the orders, fulfilling the orders, all of the things we do in the support functions and in the manufacturing functions will play a direct role in the speed with which we can convert opportunity to cash. So a lot of profit leaks across the business in the supporting functions, marketing, sales, inbound logistics. We already spoke about a lot of them, but how diligent are we in going after those profit leaks systematically and identifying the correct countermeasures to those and fixing them is crucial. I'll give you two examples. Recently, we are working with, the most recent example is working with one of the facilities management company. They are the leaders here in the region that I operate in Middle East. And we were discussing last couple of days with their the material distribution of material from their central warehouse to their site stores. So large 40-ton reefer trucks are dispatched from Muscat to Salalah and various other parts of the country. And one reefer truck in a month, they are spending around 2,000 Omani Riyal. So 2,000 Omani Riyal translates to more than 3.5 lakh Indian rupees. Just the fuel cost on one truck, and multiply that by several trucks, and you can do the math. It adds up to more than 15-20 crore Indian rupees in a year in terms of running expenses of these vehicles. So imagine, and a lot of areas are not addressed in day-to-day operations, right? For example, the operations manager was with me yesterday, and when we are going one profit leak in this area, for example, we were discussing about what is the turnaround time of the truck. Suppose a truck gets loaded and it has to reach the destination and get unloaded. The longer it takes in the whole process, the greater is going to be the fuel loss. Suppose the driver parks the car and he's going to sleep for 3 hours. Imagine the reefer truck running for 3 hours. The profit leak is enormous. Or let's say he reaches the destination, the unloading staff is not available, and he's just running the engine for 1 hour, 2 hours. And these areas are not investigated in detail, you know. So one issues come up, we say, okay, let us look at these issues closer. Let us collect the data for the last month and see what happened. And tremendous insights come, you know. So we say we establish it, a truck should turn around within, let's say, 12 hours in a long haul dispatch. But it has actually taken 14 hours. So where the 2 hours went, what is the loss of fuel in those 2 hours? So these are the profit leakages we are talking about. In every aspect of the business, you will find it is there. But if we don't put concerted effort, we will never be able to pluck those fruits. So when you do that, you know, profit leadership itself is a very systematic approach. Function by function, we go in, sit with the stakeholders, brainstorm, identify various forms of profit leakages in the business, and then come up with a very consolidated action list for arresting those profit leakages. Right. So in the words of Deming, one of the great quality gurus, talks about the speed of response involving everyone. This is a big one, and zero defect in operations. Right. So involving everyone means what? It means that the people who are closest to the function or activity know best about the process. But unless you involve them, motivate them to start to think differently, start to think like entrepreneurs, you will not see the change happening. You know, oftentimes people in different functions, they have no idea where the money comes, where the money goes. They think somehow the company is running, and the owners or the managers know how things are happening. So a small percentage, you know, maybe 2% of the company workforce really know the financial consequence of their actions. The large majority, 98%, they are just focused on events and activities, running the operations, right? So even little sensitization of those rest of the 98% of the people in terms of what is the financial consequence of their actions and how it affects the business, you will find a big change in culture. People will start becoming more mindful and start taking more ownership in terms of the profit leakages of the business, right? So over time, the profit, your actual profit will start moving towards your entitlement profit. This is what we are seeing in many industries where we have run this exercise across the sector, you know, transformer industry, FMCG industry, plastics industry, the list goes on. And the beauty is a lot of this is methodology. You know, many times people believe that technology is going to solve their problems. This is one of the big fallacies in management. People believe that you bring in a new technology, all our problems will go away. At the click of a button, I will be able to get all the reports, and suddenly, magically, all the profit leakages will vanish. You can't be farther from the truth, right? These are not my words. These are words of great people like Taichi Ono, the father of lean system from Toyota, or Dr. Parnaby, the father of lean in the UK in Lucas TVS. A lot of them have written and spoken volumes about how technology in itself cannot solve your profitability crisis. It has to be through a methodology. Methodology takes discipline. You have to dig deeper, you have to investigate, you have to bring people together, identify the deficiencies in the process, implement the correct solutions. So this is a lot of heavy lifting. This is like going to the gym, you know. So the synonymous, if you want to be fitter, you have to go to the gym, but you have to persist. You have to go 3 days a week, you have to maintain your diet, and you have to do that over at least 365 days to get some result. And technology is like buying a new car or buying a new fancy pill, but in itself it's not going to solve the problem if you don't get the methodology right. So that's how it is. So one has to look at the business value stream end to end. This itself is a moment of truth, because most people look at their business from a their functional silo. If I'm in planning, I'll be good at understanding what is needed in terms of material resources, and I will make sure that I give the information to the next function, let's say the procurement team that will place the orders. But I don't care about what is the promises made to customer. Are we going to deliver it in let's say 90 days? Maybe I have a role to play of 15 days in this whole value chain. But if I don't play my role correctly, or if I don't understand clearly what commitments marketing has made to the customer and what I need to pass on to supply chain, you will find that the chain breaks, right? And when we bring these folks together, usually when you do a cross-functional activity, the first thing is people start to empathize with each other. They understand what are each other's problems and pains, and then start to work collaboratively. So the alignment really needs to, profitability is more of the outcome. You need to make people accountable, bring people together. and you need to have the right processes, right? So people need to submit themselves to a better process, better way of working. And that cannot happen by one individual or one department. It has to be a concerted effort across the organization. So looking at product, looking at process, technology, market, and the most important lever, which is the people side of the business. So on that note, I will pass it on to NC to wrap up the session.
Yeah, Naveen. Thank you, Naveen. I'll just share my screen once again. I hope is my screen visible? Naveen, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So thank you, Naveen, for a wonderful coverage of the main topic. So I will not take more than 5 minutes before I hand over to Mr. Hiren for sharing his thoughts. Just to summarize, I think we have been talking about various things which will essentially challenge the status quo of the organization. So in summary, if you want to take away today is that everybody is very keen to grow their revenue. They want to improve their profits, and then cost of operations and has to be continuously brought down. And the image has to happen over a period of time, which is essential for all these developing countries. So what is needed henceforth, the idea of profit leadership is to bring a visionary and knowledgeable leadership, and also empower the people through systems, because most of the organizations are people dependent. If that person doesn't turn up on that particular day, the work suffers. Bringing in about robust process and performance metrics is what we have spoken about today in general. So essentially, the most important aspect at the root of the organization is to create an ambition. There's no point in talking that 30 years ago we were equal to China, etc. I think we need to probably look at in a very different, ambitious way and bring alignment of the entire team, and then become aggressive in terms of transforming the organization. That is why the top management commitment and leadership becomes very important. So the main item is that we were more transactional leadership in nature, in the sense that we are very happy to do firefighting the whole day and then go back home unfulfilled. So from the transactional leadership mindset, we need to move away to the transformational leadership mindset. So that is extremely important to challenge all the status quo and then bring about major transformation, uniting the people together. So in terms of organizational strategies, that has to be put under microscope in the future to come forward the way in which we want. We need to look at the marketing strategies, and then we need to look at the product development strategies, and we need to look at our operational management strategies, and then the people strategies. So these are the four broad themes on which many of the organizations are fine-tuning their own facilities. So in other words, this whole organization currently, maybe like all the arrows are shown in different direction. We need to bring about alignment through all these profit leadership practices. It is not a rocket science. It is essentially adopting a engine that can really take us where we want to go. So finally, SSA has joined hands with EICMA. I'm sure that many of you may be aware that we are going to be a knowledge partner for EICMA in terms of their not only offering training courses. So primarily EICMA has got a very ambitious plan to set up their center of excellence, where we will play a very active role in terms of competency building of all these industries, as well as hand-holding them for any kind of profit leadership programs. So kindly feel free to contact EICMA for any further kind of inputs that you may like to have. So finally, as Lao Tzu said 2,500 years ago, if you do not change your direction, you may end up where you are heading. So now the major change worldwide happening, be it a superpower like America or countries which are trying to cope up with the kind of challenges. everywhere the leadership emerging, challenging all the way in which we have been thinking and doing. So finally, as our Guru Edward Deming said, you don't need to do this, as survival is not compulsory. What he is in a very, very jovial manner, he says that if the leadership is not, need not have to do all this we are talking about in this program today, because there's no compulsion for survival. So with that, I will hand over to Mr. Hiren, requesting you to visit our hall number 5, where quite a number of resources have been provided to stay in touch with our knowledge resource. Thank you very much. I request Mr. Hiren to take over. Hirenji?
Yeah, can I? Can you hear me? Hello. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there's a bit of breaking of voice, Mr. Hiren.
Yeah. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yeah, we are able to hear you. Can you share your screen?
Yeah, I will share my screen. Okay.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah, it's visible now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, wonderful. Great.
Yeah. Okay, it's fine. Yeah. Yeah. First of all, let me thank IPMA and SSA for giving me this opportunity to present my take on profit leadership. Basically, what I would like to highlight over here is why India's manufacturing sector is underperforming and my take on its remedy. To start with the Indian manufacturing sector, I mean, all of us talk about Indian manufacturing sector has tremendous potential. It can reach 1 trillion, and it is projected to reach 1 trillion turnover by 2025. But the basic point we need to understand is India and China's manufacturing sectors were comparable in 1990. However, India was slightly ahead than China in capital goods production. But today, if we see Chinese capital goods sector is over 50 times larger than India's. And the manufacturing sector is 10 times larger than India's.
Hirenji, can you use your Wi-Fi, please? The voice is breaking.
27 point. Oh, properly?
Yeah, it's clear now.
Yeah, yeah. So 27.2% of India, China's economy was which is 5 times larger than India, is actually powered by manufacturing. This graph clearly shows us the same. And over a period of time, what we have seen is our services sector has grown more than the manufacturing sector. So where did India fall back? Basically, high cost of production and poor logistics in labor-intensive industries. That's a fairly straightforward challenge. Basically, our infrastructure is lagging a lot. Capital and technological intensive industries face tougher challenges. Hence, we have to learn more complex technologies necessary to develop more complex management and leadership abilities. And well, need for more sophisticated policies. That's something the our government is trying to help us in the right way possible. And I guess IPMA is taking the right step towards it also by facilitating us with these kind of platforms, learning platforms. Now, how can India achieve rapid all-round industrial development? Basically, we need to be much faster learners. We need to introduce a time to learn metric to gauge our pace of industrial development. In fact, if you see, this helped Japanese and the South Korean industry to grow after World War II. And China also seems to have followed the same pattern. Also, it is extremely important for Indian factories to develop capabilities of producing complex products of global standards. Something like what China, what Singapore adopted. Singapore's founding father, if you see, had a time-based target to make it Asia's fully developed nation, and also aimed to increase the wage level to raise the standard of living. They established high value manufacturing in Singapore. Now today, if you go visit Singapore, biggest of industries have set up their R&D centers and their product development centers in Singapore. So it's basically a self-containment contained economy, and maybe India needs to learn something from take a leaf from Singapore's growth model, and develop skills for high value manufacturing. We also need to reinvent and rethink our manufacturing. It's like today's changing technology every 2-3 years. There's a change in technology. We have to be fast. We have to adopt and adapt to the digital transformation. And I don't see any reason why India cannot adopt, because India is the IT hub for the world, and with the help of the IT industry, we can also change our approach and adopt more complex technologies. At the same time to convert our intelligence into industry-wide skill set. So again, we need to be fast learners towards towards new technologies. There's a great, we also need to transform the skill base of India. So not only the universities producing, which are producing new and new talent every day, but at the same time, industry level as well, we need to facilitate our workers for to learn new technologies every day. Why does industry need profitable leadership for these industry-wide changes? According to me, with new technology each day, skills need to be updated constantly. Profitable leadership involves agility and versatility. As I said before, we need to adopt and adapt. So we have to be, leadership needs to be constantly thinking and making facilitate its enterprise to how to adopt to new technologies. We need to constantly rethink and combat failing traditional methods to help development of the industry. Again, we keep on saying that labor intensive labor is cheaper than China today and all those things. But given today's technology, it doesn't matter whether you produce a component in India, China, or USA. Because with deployment of automation and stuff, automation and artificial intelligence and machine learning, the cost of manufacturing will be same all around any place in the world. We just have to adopt ourselves to new technologies and be competitive, which in turn will help us being competitive around the world. Important to continually develop new skills and remain valid. Also, at the same time, it has to be the leadership has to be a change maker, initiate a paradigm shift practices by saying willing to risk losing it all to win it all attitude. It's something what Ratan Tata did for the acquisition of Jaguar. He knew that Tata Motors was stuck. You needed a really good technological platform to fight the global giants. And what they did is they bought over Jaguar Land Rover back in 2008, 2010. And the learnings that the technological learnings that they got from the ownership of Jaguar, and they've started to implement that in their products today, and that can be seen in their new product lines. These are the qualities profitable leaders which one must develop in order to foster the rapid development of our industry. Finally, 3 key factors I feel is leaders of enterprises have to develop more complex management abilities and facilitate deployment of complex technologies in their respective businesses. It is also important for leaders and enterprises to appreciate human beings as assets of the enterprise and not just labor costs. So indirectly, constantly upgrade their skills, educate them to newer technologies, and also have a vision to deploy newer technologies in their respective businesses. Industry-specific trade policies must make room for domestic enterprises to learn faster. And I think this thing is quite evident by the initiative taken by IPMA and SSA with this Center of Excellence that they are proposing to come up with, where learning will be one of the key factors. And finally, the need, what I would say is, I would like to end my talk with the tiger-deer paradox. If you see, the deer has a 90 km/h running speed against tiger speed of 50 km/h. But deer always becomes a victim of the tiger. The reason being, the deer believes he is weaker than the tiger, and this fear makes the deer to look back again and again. So what happens is they lose focus, and at the end, it ends up losing to the tiger. So we should never underestimate our own potentials. However, there's nothing wrong in taking external help to keep ourselves focused. And this is where I feel IPMA and SSA are helping especially the plastic industry. IPMA is doing its bit on the level of plastic industry, with the level of plastic industry, and SSA has partnered with them in this very good initiative to train the leaders to new management techniques and skills. And I think everybody should take advantage of this. If you ask me personally, yes, all these slides which I presented, all the data which I presented about China being ahead than us, it's known to everyone. But none of, at least for me, I never knew how to go about it. How do I, take up this change for my enterprise? However small my enterprise is, I knew that I needed to go ahead. I needed someone to help me or give me a guidance. Where should I go? And this is what I got once from this initiative of IPMA and SSA during the lockdown. And yes, today I feel that, okay, at least I started on the right path finally. I would encourage all my industry colleagues as well to take advantage of this facility of this new initiative taken by IPMA and SSA. Thank you.
Thank you, Hiren, for a very outstanding coverage of your thoughts. I think it was very thought-provoking and really added icing on the cake on the subject that we have discussed today. The high points are very evident that we don't need to be defensive about where we are at the moment. And your concluding remark about tiger chasing the deer was really thought-provoking and very relevant to the current situation. I'm sure that SSA and IPMA will become the tiger or the deer. I don't know. Time only can prove that. So we want to chase these, industries to do their best. So looking at the past performance and the outstanding potential our industries in the developing regions have performed, there is no depth of competency or balance in the, we have been making many different parts of the world proud, and we donated.
Self-belief is our self-belief. We are lacking self-belief. That is what
Absolutely.
I personally.
So we have donated the Vice President of America, so and the CEO of Google. So we are very proud of this, the kind of brains that we have. So all that is needed from your presentation is we need to bring in that shift in the mindset that we can do it. And the second is resources are available, plenty of resources are available. So definitely that would add into the kind of impetus that is required. So the Deepak ji, I suggest that we can take questions unless otherwise you have something to sum it up. Can
You're
you
on
unmute?
mute, Deepak ji.
So I think it was a wonderful session, NC. I had to leave for 10 minutes, but I was then attending as a audience. So I always like to be on the other side. So only after a very nice presentation by Mr. Hiren, I came back as a finalist. So excellent presentations, I believe. And if we can take some questions, if there are. Shiraz, can we have some questions? If you can see the chat box and let us know who's going to receive the questions.
So Mr. Deepak, there are a few questions, but there are people who are sharing their thoughts. But one question I would like to share by Mr. Swaminathan. He is referring to one of our slides. He is mentioning that why that formula bracket, if one group facing problem, other group company will help, can apply to all generation group businesses. So I think he's quoting from Mayor Omshil Rothschild quote. So any response to this? If one group company facing problem, other group companies will help. So you wanted to know, is it applicable to all generation group businesses? So anybody can answer.
Deepak ji, would you like to?
No, I think it is best for you to answer and see. This is typically you have more experience with such scenarios.
Okay, this is the problem of being the senior member of the panel. So anyway, I venture on it. If I've understood the question correctly, in the context that we discussed today, many of the family organizations in the MSME sector, of course, it doesn't mean that all MSMEs will remain as a family organization forever. But unfortunately, 98% of them started by entrepreneurs. They remain as smaller outfit. Of course, among the many industries, without quoting any names, the second and third generation has not grown the business. What the opportunities that were available. There were companies which were 70 years old, but still remained less than 10 crores turnover. But if you really look at, and I happen to be the board member in many of these companies, so I was just trying to examine, is it because of the financial constraint, or is it because of the the alignment of the family members, or the fear of losing control, or fear of growing, etc. So my analysis shows that it is mostly because of the lack of ambition, meaning that the priority got shifted, and then the moment that they have aligned in the family as well as the various directors and the stakeholders, and they could really make a phenomenal growth in a very short period of time. The help was coming forth from the the group companies, which each one of them had a synergy. Particularly, I can quote plastic sectors where you may have a polymer unit, you may have a die making unit, you may have a processing unit, etc. So they came forward to utilize the synergy among the group, and then they found a newfound kind of model of their business, by which many of the overseas companies were interested because they were able to supply the component in a very competitive price at the same time in a very short lead time. So to answer your question, I think bringing synergy among the group companies are very important, not only within the family. That is where IPMA is going to play a very important role. Because within the industry sector itself, there's a huge amount of cooperation available. So providing a platform for the cooperation, what ITMA is really trying to bring forth. Deepakji, you want to supplement anything on this?
No, I think you have answered it very well. So I don't think there is any need to supplement.
Okay.
You have
So anyway,
completed this.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So no more questions for now. So if Deepakji would like to ask any question to the panelists, if not, then we can conclude here.
No, I think I just wanted to inform the attendees that we have had a very good experience with SSA Business Solution. With the NC as the mentor, Ganesh and other members of the SSA. And the programs which we have undertaken are basically very beneficial for the industry. And we are soon going to launch our Management Technology and Entrepreneurship Center in Mumbai on 16th of February. The intention is basically to bring best of the partners, the knowledge partners, both technology as well as management partners, and provide the best possible solution to the industry. And our main target is basically plastic industry and also other allied industries. So primarily the objective is how we can speed up the development of the products, how we can increase the speed to the market. The time to market is very important. Having said that, we may have various 3D scanning tools, reverse engineering tools, softwares, and also 3D printing. And we are working on various design formulations, how to bring that latest technology and state of the art processes to be imbibed by the units, both in terms of training and also services. And to supplement and icing on the cake is all operational excellence and management excellence at the factory level, also in their business process optimization. So that is where SSA comes into the picture, where these best practices, the international practices, how basically the best tools and techniques could be imbibed in the company so as to increase your profit, and how you can really do away with unnecessary leakages. And ultimately the bottom line is that how to increase your revenue. So I think we are very thankful to NC and his entire team for having worked with APMA in a very close cooperation, and actually we look forward to working with them for a longer benefit, and also to make sure that whatever exercise we have done in last 5 months, and we perhaps will want to do in future as well, brings tangible changes and tangible improvements with the industry. So having said that, I would like to thank NC and Ganesh for being in this panel, and also our Mr. Hiren Chandrana, who brought a very important industry perspective into this panel discussion. So Sarfraz, if there is anything, or we can break, and then I think the next session is at
2 p.m.
2 o'clock, right? On the
Yes,
inventory
inventory,
optimization.
yes. And we have also, we have also put up the link for the participants to share their feedback. So request them to please share their feedback for this session, and please attend our next session at 2 p.m.
Okay.
on inventory
So
cost
where is that?
optimization.
Where is this link posted?
Shiraz has already posted in the group.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Fine. So that will be very nice. Okay. So thank you, NC. Thank you, Ganesh. Thank you, Mr. Hiren. So Naveen is also there. Achha, I didn't realize Naveen is there. Okay, I'm so sorry. Naveen, I am very sorry, because when I was there in the panel, I didn't see you. So anyway, welcome, Naveen. Very nice to see you. Maybe I missed your session. But I mean, having you on the panel is a matter of privilege and pride for us also, because you bring in a lot of international expertise on the panel. So thank you, Naveen, and we will surely connect again. Yeah. So thank you once again, everyone, and we'll meet at 2 o'clock for the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Deepakji. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending the program. Take care. See you soon. Bye.